Good evening. It's always a pleasure to speak to the great people of New Hampshire. Excuse me. New Hampshire is a place where presidential dreams are born and some fade. It's still a couple years away. Actually, it's almost a year away now. But before the primaries come around, but we have a lot to talk about tonight. Tonight we honor Amos Tuck, who was elected to the New Hampshire House of Representatives in 1842. As a member of the Democratic Party, but broke with pro slavery Democrat leaders in 1844 and was formally cast out of the party. He ran for Congress anyway and was elected as an independent to the 13th Congress. In 1845, he called a convention to form an independent movement in favor of anti-slavery congressional candidate John P. Hill. This convention would later be identified as the nucleus of the Republican Party. And Amos is who we honor here tonight in Manchester. I want to say it's always an honor to come up to New Hampshire. I was just up here just a couple weeks ago, and the people in the town, it's just all about New Hampshire. It's just wonderful. So it's great to be back up here, even though it's for a very brief time. It's great to be up here this evening. Tonight, I want to focus on restoring the American dream. When I was growing up, we had a great president, a president by the name of Ronald Reagan. In his 8 years in the White House, Reagan brought back a sense of pride in our nation. He brought back a sense of patriotism into this country. It needed that badly at the time. Our nation, at that time, had high unemployment, high gas prices, the Iranian hostage crisis. We're seeing some of those same things in the news headlines today. What this nation needs is another Ronald Reagan. During the past couple of years, many people have referred to me as a modern day Ronald Reagan. And while I'm flattered by the comparison, and President Reagan and I share many of the same beliefs, there's only one Ronald Reagan. President Reagan often talked about patriotism. He felt it was important, as well as I do. I feel it's very important. A rebirth of our nation's patriotism starts in our classrooms, in our schools. Our schools must return the Pledge of Allegiance and prayer to schools. That's where you form the basis to patriotism. I remember going to high school back in Texas, DeSoto High School, and it was introduced to who would become my civics professor my senior year in high school, and he had this club. It's called the Red, White, and Blue Club. And every Friday night, we would display this football field size flag and unfurl it during the national anthem played by our band. We also displayed it in parades. And this goes a long ways back, but the local arena there in Dallas called Reunion Arena, we were at the very first Reunion Arena game, the first Dallas Mavericks game. But being part of that organization, being around this teacher, got a sense of patriotism into you. He made you want to serve. And that's why I'm here tonight. It's because of this teacher. You know, and I said he was a government teacher who instilled a sense of patriotism. He taught you to believe in your government. And while he was from a different party, he never tried to push his agenda on his students. He never once pushed his agenda on his students. He taught you how the government ran and operated. Our nation needs more Bill Hickeys. You know, one of my favorite TV shows is West Wing. Remember that show from 20 years ago? The Democratic Party of President Bartlett is nothing like the Democratic Party today. Nothing like politics today. If you ever watch that show, it's like going into a time warp because you see a whole different side of our country from what we see today. And it's just a totally different place. You know, when it comes to government spending, and I will call her my opponent, Marianne Williamson wants more government and entitlements. She wants to spend, program after program after program. I'm for less government and an end to social welfare. I want to focus on the future of our nation and our classrooms. Our schools are still rebounding from the pandemic. The latest information available shows a drop in scores on benchmark tests. We learned during the pandemic that remote learning, while valuable in the early days of the pandemic, it does not have a place in today's classroom. I have a plan for education, and it's quite simple. We must increase teacher pay to a point, to a level that makes it more attractive. We must teach the basics in education, the ABCs, the math, history, the good, the bad, the ugly of history. We must take out the sanitized versions of our history. Our children must learn from the mistakes of the past so they are not destined to repeat them in the future. That is so important. Yes, we made mistakes in our past. Many things we've done wrong as a nation. I'm not about to stand here tonight and tell you the United States of America is perfect. It's not. We made mistakes. Some pretty bad mistakes, if you want to know the truth. But the way we learn not to repeat those mistakes is to teach them in school. Our classrooms should not be a test bed for political ideology, but a depository of facts and history. You're asking, so I'm going to increase education spending. Won't that increase taxes? And the answer is no. You've already heard me say that I'm for less government, but I'm very much for education. Here's what I propose to do. By cutting unnecessary programs, such as to continue to fund the COVID pandemic at its levels it currently is now, and overhauling our nation's unemployment system so that the program is not an income source, but a pathway to a better job. You know, just this week, the COVID emergency was officially terminated, officially ended. And thus with that, all of the funding that goes into that program will be shortly terminated, or should be by the legislation that was passed. And what I'm saying with this is we learned a lot during the pandemic. When this first started, we learned how to deal with it. And so what I'm proposing that we do is, and the first steps already happened, is that we terminate COVID funding, but we prepare for the next pandemic. Not at the levels we are now, but at a level where when it happens, and it's just probably a matter of when it happens again, we'll be ready. We'll be ready. Okay, the current unemployment numbers show there are 9.9 million jobs available in our nation. There are 5.9 million people unemployed. 5.9 million people are currently unemployed. The way to revamp the unemployment program is this. Under my plan, you would be required to look for a job every day and show proof on a weekly basis that you have. That's the way that you get off the unemployment program. You know, it never was meant to be an income source. Like I said earlier, it's meant to be a pathway to a better job. Going back to education, many teachers throughout our nation work many long hours. and often spend their own money for resources for the classroom. It's time that teachers get a livable wage. And how about the person who wants to change careers in midstream? There are many people out there who want to do that. My plan will pay for your certification to become a teacher if you commit to 1 year in the classroom. Now, I know many districts offer that. Many school districts throughout our country offer that, but I'm offering it as a federally funded program. You know, while I'm talking about teachers around our nation, I hear stories of having a family barely getting by. You know, why are the people that we entrust our most valuable possession to every day, that we drop off at school at 7:15 and pick up at around 3:30 every afternoon? Why are those people, the people in these classrooms, living at the poverty line? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. Under my program, every teacher will make a livable wage. A livable wage. You know, why shouldn't the person who is grooming our leaders be paid a livable wage? You think about it. In your classroom, in a teacher's classroom, it can be kindergarten, it can be 12th grade. You've got a future scientist, a future doctor, a future engineer, and it's the teacher's job to get them ready. Why don't we support them and help them by getting a livable wage? The polarization that we're seeing in our nation must stop. We must learn to respect each other and each other's opinion. We become so hurt that someone disagrees with us, we take it to the street, oftentimes in a violent manner. We have come so divided in our nation, and hatred has increased across our country. It's time for this to stop. We need to learn to respect each other's opinions and not take it so personally. In this race, there are many opponents. We are in this race because we disagree on the direction our nation is headed. We don't hate each other or name call each other. Americans, we can do the same too. We can once again achieve great goals only if we come together as one. Let's start that pathway to coming together as one by start respecting one another again. Let's reach out to our brothers and sisters and shake their hands. Let's once again become what President Reagan often referred to, that shining city on a hill. I want to close tonight with a quote out of the Bible, Matthew 5, verse 14. Matthew says, "You are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden." My friends, in the word of Scripture, let us become what Matthew called the city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. Becoming united in the way that we did in the 80s with President Reagan, we can do that now. And once we become united, start respecting one another, start loving one another again, we can accomplish great things as the United States of America. May God bless you, may God bless our troops, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you all very much. Thank you.